right, this is going to be the first episode, not of the Crackdown season, I don't know, bloody whatever, 3 or something at this point in time, because actually, like The Witcher, we decided to cut it off at 2 because it was getting a bit too much, it wasn't going anywhere, the main character wasn't being used enough, the side characters were dominating the show. You get the premise. No, this is actually a new show called The Best Damn League Show. I can't remember. Is it period or is it just Best Damn League Show? I don't even know the name
period.
of my
We are straight up copying the sports name, because I think that was one of the best sports names of all time. I love that name. I mean, the show sucked, but like the name itself was actually banger. So
the only problem is though, one, that is already a little bit boom. Like I know the kids just don't know what the show was, but I agree with you, by the way. The name's sick. The show was terrible. It was just the most like pandering bullshit. The players, they were just sucking the dick all the time. But listen, the name's great, and obviously it does reflect the arrogance that even though this is episode 1, it's just going to be better than all the other shows, isn't it? Because they don't have us.
I mean, it worked on the Crackdown. Why can't it work here?
Exactly. So, okay, if people don't know, in fact, let's just do a little brief thing before we get into it that I think people might find interesting. I'm going to actually reveal a secret to all of you that I've never revealed on the Crackdown, because I just didn't feel it was appropriate, and the show worked perfectly fine from my perspective, and it was a successful show. So one thing people might not understand is, on the Crackdown, because it had to have its own unique format, like Dom does Face Check, he does other shows, I do some of the Insight, because we're given thoughts elsewhere, right? We wanted to make it so there was a theme, which was generally, it was like half interview, half talk show. So we would bring the guest on, but you saw, depending on, especially if they didn't have that many things themselves to say in the interview section, we'd go a little bit more free for all, we do the talk show aspect. But as a result, I think people always got confused with the fact that like on that show, Dom was basically the host, and I was sort of like, essentially, I just jump in whenever I want, and also because Dom knows I'm going to give my thoughts anyway, he doesn't have to set it up like, right, and now we didn't do like the traditional thing of like, you wait for the host to ask you politely and then you say it. So as a result, I got the vibe, I have to say, on Crackdown fans, that there was a small percentage of them didn't understand that it wasn't just an interview of the player, and I wasn't somehow interrupting. I'm on the show. Like me giving my thoughts was actually essential. And then also one last detail I will mention. I don't bring this up much because I hate identity politics, so I never use this as an excuse. But if people are unaware, I am actually autistic. And on that particular show, this is what's unique. We didn't have a producer. So what you won't know as a fan is I never saw what Dom's camera looked like. I could never see his camera. By the way, spoiler, that happens when I do my own personal shows. In the past, they could never see my camera. So I'm sure many people are at the same disadvantage. So I will say, if people wonder why, sometimes it's like I just jumped in when the other person was about to say, because I couldn't see that they were just about to speak. And so luckily, I think it all worked out anyway, mate. I was never that bothered by it. I thought it was just a minor amount of people got upset,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll actually take the opposite approach. I think that Thorin only interrupted us, and the show would have worked better if it was just me and a guest, and then there would just be dead space for like every third point for like a minute and a half, and we just awkwardly stared at each other. So that's what I was going for with the show.
All right.
So I decided, why not just do a different show, and instead of the dead space, I'll just have Thorin host the show, and I'll be the one that interrupts him all the time.
Yes. And also, I'll say, that, in theory, might even have been more popular with some of your fans, except if it had been an episode with Neon. Anyway, little Easter egg for the old fans there, if they remember that one. Okay. So, let's get into it. Speaking of Neon, this is a show, despite the name of the title, it's not actually the best league in the world, I will say. We're covering the LEC. Listen, a brilliant league to cover. Certainly more interesting in certain senses than the LCS. Maybe not as good as the LPL, but we all know y'all ain't ready for the red pill of the LPL yet. Take that blue pill, your Western medicine, go to sleep and wake up again, ready to believe Reckless is going to be in the final of Worlds. Some of you still believe that. He's not even in bloody LEC anymore. So let's get into it, right, Dom? Obviously, everyone wants to know our thought. That's why I'm just flaming Reckless at the beginning as well. And again, he's not even in LEC, but listen, why quit the habit of a lifetime? So let's get into this one. Obviously, week 1 of LEC's been undertaken already, right? I've just got to start. We've got to start with, to me, the biggest storyline, which is, I know you especially had to go through last year the whole thing of like, why are you still betting on Perks? Why haven't you just given up on him? It's like, and at Worlds, I was just sort of going, really? No one sees why. Like, to me, this was like, you. That's like if Bitcoin went to like $1 tomorrow. What, you wouldn't buy it? If you wouldn't, you're a moron, mate. I'd buy loads of it for fucking $1. So to me, it was like the easiest buy-in of all time. It's like, dude, it's Perks. Like, he's going to make it work somehow. So to me, they're doing it again, Dom. It's only 3 games and already. Yeah. Because I will say, they did build this as a super team, and obviously it has massive names, but everyone's out on Vitality already, I know. It's like, they already decided it's trash. It can't work. Like, come on, hit me with your thoughts. Where are you at on Vitality?
I mean, I just think about it like this. So let's say Vitality ends up having a pretty mediocre season. They go like 9-9 or something, squeak into the playoffs as 6th seed. do you want to play them? Like if you're like a Mad Lions fan or a Rogue fan, would you want to play Vitality in the first round in playoffs? And it's like, and then most people would be like, no, I don't want to play them then, because like they have all these players that there's all this volatility. Like they could just pop off randomly. What happens if we just get playoff perks? What happens if he just starts smurfing? That's the same reason why you shouldn't give up on them right now, is because that's in the back of your mind that this team will probably end up being pretty good. I mean, they have a bunch of people that are just winners on that team. And I feel like they have the perfect combination of players that have that like championship, like winners mentality, where I see that with Carzzy. I see that like mentality of, you know what, it's going to come together. Like, I believe we can win. Like that just pure belief in your own ability and your team's ability that things will just work out. I see that in Perkz. And then you have that complemented with the skill, right? Like you have the self-made, the Alfari, the people that haven't been able to win yet, but they have the tools to have that happen. So I just feel like that's really what you need for one of these teams to be successful. You don't just put 5 Perkzes on a team where it's like, oh, all these people that are a little bit less skilled but have, you know, all the intangibles. Like, no, you only need one Perkz. Like that, yeah, maybe he runs it down sometimes, but what's gonna matter is that guy is going to be on your team in games that really, really matter. So when people are fucking nervous and they're worried, oh shit, what's gonna happen? Oh, I hope we don't lose this series. I've lost in the first round before. We lost in the first round last time. I hope this doesn't happen again. You have that guy in your team that's like, yeah, we're just gonna win. We will win this game. Like, I'm gonna make sure. Like, that's the type of confidence you need on the team. So, dude, I saw it all of last year. Obviously, people know that Perkz is one of my favorite players. He's probably my favorite player. And I got to hear it all last year. Dom, he's inting in Summer Split. He's inting. Oh my God, they didn't even win Summer Split. They're going to, like, what happened at Worlds? They had by far the best North American performance that we've had in the last 3 years. Since that C9 semi, that was the best North American performance that we've had. And think about how they got there. What happened in that tiebreaker? It was Rogue versus C9. The best player in the game by far was Perkz. He was the only, like, he was inting half of his plays, but his good plays were so good that they canceled out all of the bad plays that he made. So I mean, like, dude, this guy, like, how do you give up on him in week 1? Like, even if they ran it down this whole split, I wouldn't give up on them by the next split. Like, you got to give them some time to actually gel. And then also you hear like certain players have COVID. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't want to speculate too hard, but you could see in some of the mic checks, players had their cameras off. When G2 had their players off, their cameras off, those were the players that actually had COVID there. So just let them fucking breathe, man. It's week 1. It's a long season. Like, chill out.
Yeah, I'll even say as well, first of all, I totally agree on the playoff point. Like, listen, no matter how this team does, just the raw players they have on this team, they could trip over and win some games in the playoffs. Like, I would even say, even if they don't end up gelling, it's just going to be a hyper version of what Vitality was last split, where again, remember, everyone was like, oh, they're so bad. Like, one game they're good, one game they're terrible. It's like, and you saw what happened in the playoffs. Dude, they almost beat Fnatic, the team that went all the way to the finals. Like, they almost themselves with quite a messy team did it. So to me, worst case scenario, they're at least going to be a playoff team, and they're going to be like an outsider. And yeah, as you say, it's week 1. Like, there's so much time for them to gel and certain synergies to come together. Like, by the way, are people just going to act like Selfmade and Perkz should instantly fit together? Like, I don't think he's ever played with a jungle like Selfmade. What a unique player. Similarly, if you're someone like Alfari, you just always win your lane, then you consider this the game. Like, no, there's other lanes out. To me, they're all in a totally new experience. I wouldn't expect it to work from week 1. And this is the maddest take of all, because it could sound like pure copium. I can't even lie. This is the take. I'm actually glad they ran it down. And here's why. Because in my opinion, that is how, if you are going to be a really good team with all these powerful weapons, that's the fastest way to get things fixed, is to fuck it all up as much as you can now. Meanwhile, I'll give you the analogy. I would hate it if they played like the G2 super team last year, where they were just really boring. They just started out really chill. They were all just sort of like playing semi-conservative. And it's like they just like narrowly lost a bunch of games. It's like, dude, that team never could explore its potential. It never could, because it's like they wanted everything to be perfect. Then they were going to go into 5th gear. This team's trying to basically like ram it to 5th gear instantly. Just they haven't just stalled the car basically. So my analogy is, I think, listen, I would guess from what I've seen in week 1, yes, I imagine the next couple of weeks are going to be a little bit rough depending on the opponent, but I would say mid-split, I expect this team to be absolutely one of the best. It's just, it feels inevitable with the players. Like, even if one player, you pick which player, could be Carzzy, maybe you're an Alfari hater. I noticed bizarrely there was a lot of those last year, even though he was amazing. Whichever one you hate, even if one of them sucks, that's the other thing about Perkz. I actually think when he has the control I believe he has in Vitality, he'll figure it out. They'll figure out a system in the team to work. Whereas I got the vibe also in Cloud9, he couldn't sort of work some of his magic behind the scenes to ultimately fix it. Like, there were egos, there was coaching stuff. There was a different vision of the game to me. So to me, I'm not that worried at the moment. Listen, I am in the sense that they're 0-3. That ain't great, and that's obviously going to hurt for trying to make playoffs. But I just feel like it's inevitable. This is one of the few times I've ever felt from a 0-3 team like they have to be good. They still have to be good.
Yeah, and it's not that hard to make playoffs. It's not like we're saying, oh, they have to beat a bunch of good teams. It's not LPL playoffs where there's 10 seeds and then you're dealing with like 6 teams that are potentially world class. This is playoffs where you just got to be better than SK, Astralis, XL, maybe Misfits, and like that's pretty much it. Like BDS as well. Like those are 5 teams. You can't be better than one of those. You only have to be better than one to make playoffs. It's not like we're talking about you having to be some insane team. Most of the other teams look like they're going to be just mid to bottom tier teams. Like Astralis, I already am like ready to say like they're probably just going to be 10th place. Like this team, we heard from what they were saying. It's like a development split for Dejor. Then you see their play. It's like, okay, but who are they going to beat? Maybe they take a game off BDS randomly. I mean, I hope they don't beat Vitality. If they start beating Vitality, then maybe we'll sing a different tune on this show. But you don't have that many teams that are competitive. You don't have that many people that you need to be better than. So the way that I see it is it's completely fine. Also, when you consider that people have COVID, they're not even in the same room together. I think that it's completely fine. The one person that I would be a little bit worried about on this team is Lebrov. Just because I've heard so many good things about this guy for so long, about how he was going to be one of the best supports in LEC. Sure. Then last split, he got rank 1. Like he just needed to be paired with a different AD carry. Like for some reason, the personality dynamics of him and Comp didn't work out. Okay, we got Crown Shot in there. Now everything's going to be fine. He just looks okay. He doesn't look great. Yes. Like I would say that Targamas's performance looked more inspiring to me than just like anything Lebrov has done recently. So he's the one player I'm a little bit worried about, but I think that even if he does like not really make the cut, the rest of the players are good enough to make up the difference.
I'm with you on that in the sense that the actual player I've seen in the LEC, it doesn't look anything like the one that was in the RLs, and certainly not from all the community hype. I'd heard similar things from coaches and people who are experts. I want to go back, though, one last player before we move to another team. I want to ask about his bot lane partner, which is, you said there actually had very bold statements about caPs, right? Which is, this is what I don't get, because certain time, like I'm not the guy, by the way, who just goes to like a pro player friend who just grills them on all the topics. What I do is like every now and then I'll throw one topic their way. Otherwise, I actually sort of like to build my own perspective. And then usually it's if I say something that thinks egregious, they reach out like, oh, he's not actually like that. You know, he does talk more better. So in the case of someone like caPs, I actually was surprised that there was all this bidding war. Like G2 was going to get him, and then suddenly he's on this Vitality super team. Because what I don't get is, personally, I thought in Mad Lions last year, he was kind of whack. Like I thought the other years, he actually was really good and very promising. I could see why people were hyping him. I thought last year, like I said it on Twitter, dude, not many, listen, don't go crazy again. It's like the Nemesis statement. Very few players have ever won 2 LEC titles, Dom. But of all the players that have won 2 LEC titles, I think he might be worse relative in those splits. Like, I thought he kind of did in some of the finals, etc.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had some bad games. And I think that partly had to do with the fact that, like, in the first spring, he was playing, or in spring when they won the title, he was playing against Hansama, who I think was by far the best AD in Europe, like bar none. I don't even think there was an argument as to like, is there anyone better than him? No, not Reckless. No one was as good as that guy. I just feel like caRZ has like a good mentality towards the game. Like I don't see him being the type of player that gets scared by negative things that happen in the game. So if you're in a 5-game series, he ends one game, I don't think he's going to suddenly play a lot worse in game 2, or he's going to be scared, or he's not going to want to go to the same pick because he just got shit on with that pick in lane. It seems like he's got more of that, like he's pretty based in his mentality about the game. He seems pretty even keel, which I like in a player. I feel like you can just tell that certain players overreact to negative things that happen. Oh, this champion got picked. Oh, we got to ban that. We got to get me on a new champion. Like we can't play this. Like he doesn't seem like one of those guys that's going to freak out. And I feel like you need a couple players on the team like that, because I sense like in some of the other players on his team, that could be a thing, like where they might overreact to bad things that happen. I think with Perks and him, they'll keep them down to earth. They'll be more just competent and able to understand the actual problems, pinpoint them, and remove whatever is actually affecting the game instead of overreacting dramatically.
Sure. Yeah, I will say, like, the one aspect for me is, like, listen, you'll know it from the types of ADCs I like and don't like. One thing, as much as I don't like super conservative ADCs like Reckless, I also don't like ADCs that just randomly int. That'll always be something that tilts me. Yep. That's why I'm glad your boy Tactical's in fucking TSM good. Let him burn there in the depths of hell with Reginald. Fuck them. I don't give them. You know, they're not going to Worlds. Fuck them. They should put them in Academy League. They should be in the Academy League. Right, okay, let's move on. So let's do the aforementioned G2, since you already mentioned Targamas. Right, I've got to say, Dom, I'll start out on this one. My problem here is I personally never actually had this lineup once I saw the full lineup and heard all the reasoning. First of all, I didn't buy some of the reasoning. Like, even though they're telling me, by the way, even privately, they were saying, but you have to understand in scrims, this was the best bot lane we had. Like, dude, these guys, it was a better signing than Hans Sama or fucking Kazi. It's like, that ain't what I've seen so far when I've been watching. So, like, to me, I think that bottom lane is going to be semi-questionable. I don't think bad, because look, it's not like this the stacked region of bot lanes, but I can't see that being that great. So to me, it's more about basically the caps show. If caps can be amazing, like at that point in time, yeah, I think they can win games, but I still personally see them as like a third or fourth type team. And if I saw the first week, it kind of just confirmed it for me. It's like they're certainly not bad, but I don't really see like at the moment like the pure explosive power that I think if people thought this was another super team type line, it isn't to me. It's like a work in progress. Where are you at?
I just don't know where caPs is, because like the guy that they have in right now, the stylization of his name is just completely different. He's got the capital P in his name and he has hair. So that's not the same guy that I remember from last, but and this is certainly not the guy that I remember from a year and a half ago. I mean, caPs was by far the best player in Europe. I don't even think there was an argument that you could make as if anyone else was as good as caPs in Europe during 2019, 2020 summer when he went back to mid. This guy was a beast. He was like the talent of Europe. He was like the guy that was going to actually ascend Europe to the fucking promised land of potentially winning a title, 2 finals in a row in Worlds. And he just looked like he had such a level of confidence that no other players had. And everyone was scared of him. You ask anyone, oh, what do you think of caPs? Like, yeah, he's just the best. It wasn't even a question. Normally, like now, if you asked who's the best player in Europe, you'd get random answers. It'd be like, oh, I mean, maybe it's Hillsong. Like Hillsong's pretty. Oh, it could be Upset. Like you could get a bunch. Like, oh, Humanoid was really good. Like you could get a bunch of different answers based on what we've seen so far and what we've seen in the last split or so. But caPs, like, I just don't know where he is. Like, I want to see the caPs that actually shit on everyone again. It just feels like he's more conservative. He lost a bit of like polished level that he had in 2020. I just remember watching him and being like, oh, this guy is like smart. He took the random craps out of his game. People just never even meant that meme. They never said that meme anymore. This guy was actually just a fucking beast all the time. Rarely made mistakes. Always popped off every game. And now it just looks like he's just not the same player. So I don't know if it's a loss of confidence or what's happening with caPs, but to me, it's like this G2 lineup isn't going to work if he's not the same dominant player that he was before.
Oh, I'm with you on that, because that's the thing. When they made this lineup, the one good thing I remember thinking is, now caPs has to be the absolute best in Europe, otherwise the lineup's pointless, so you can't win if he isn't. Like, basically, this lineup is constructed for him to be the best player in LEC. If he is, I think the rest of it can work. The problem I have is this. I agree with you. I don't think last year he was the caPs I expected. He definitely hasn't been so far. The problem I have is this. We're all chasing the dragon of that fucking Gen G series from 2020 when he just hit all over BDD and the Korean team, like an actual team that's in finals and LCK shit. Like, by the way, do you realise, Western fans, that implies G2 could have won LCK? That's not a joke. Like that wasn't even impossible at that point in time. The problem is, not only has the West never really come close to that peak again, but caPs himself, it's like I've never seen that guy again. And I'm really concerned actually with the point you're making here, which is he's starting just in style to be. It's not like he's not getting the kills he's hitting. I could live with that. It's like stylistically he's become more conservative. And the reason why I'm concerned about that, Dom, is this. You know, when everyone used to make fun of my boy Froggen for just farming out the lane safely, always doing well, you're up in CS, then going in a fight, just do the team damage, but don't risk dying instantly, until. Here's what they don't realise. That is the path of all LEC mid laners, as far as I can tell. Because at the time when Froggen had come there, because he's a couple of years before Bjergsen, everyone was like, he should be more like Bjergsen, play Zed and FaZe and a guy. Spoiler, a couple of years later, Bjergsen's the fucking mage player. He's doing a lot, like, I think, unfortunately, I worry if players, like, it's almost like as you get experience, you don't want to gamble as much, or you don't want to try the sort of high variance play. Because I personally think if you're caPs, dude, it's like being Hillsang. No, please don't ever stop hinting. Like, if you stop hinting, like, the magic's gone. Like, your mojo's gone at that point in time. Like, I love the fact that Hillsang is a maniac no matter who he plays when he never stops going in. So, like, I hope caPs hasn't sort of, like, I don't know, started to overly self-reflect or think it's all on him and he has to play safe or something. Dude, you actually have to be the caPs of old, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes that's what happens when people gain more information. I've been reading a concept that was pretty interesting in a book called Blink about how, like, decisions are actually made better under pressure with less information. Like, it's better if you only are focusing on like 2 or 3 things and you like use very important factors to make your decision, as opposed to having like 50 things that you're thinking about and you're trying to balance every single one. Because people have this mentality that having more information and like being a pro for longer, being exposed to more situations, like having more ideas of how matchups work and all this stuff, how that's naturally going to be a good thing. I think that's why people think, oh, players naturally get better over time, because the more you play, the more information you get, the better decisions you make, and then you'll eventually just be the best player. You know, like they have this mentality of a natural progression that will happen consistently over time, just based on the amount of experience you get if you maintain a good mentality and you practice and you get coached and you still play solo queue and you have the drive and passion. My biggest issue is that I feel like sometimes players get more information and it makes them a worse player almost, because you need to play with instinct at some point. You have to understand, like, this guy's killable. Don't overthink it. Don't be considering a million different factors. It's like, oh, well, we saw the other jungler on his golems. Well, maybe he might skip a camp and he could be here. Like, at some point you actually have to break free of that type of mental prison and actually go for the plays that seem like they're there in front of you. And I feel like a lot of players end up just considering way too many things. And I mean, when you think of League of Legends like that, oh, is the support roaming? Is the jungle roaming? Where are people all the time on the map? And you're trying to track all these things. It just becomes an impossible puzzle that you can't solve. And you default to making the play that will almost never be the worst play, which is just not doing much. So I think that's like the biggest issue that I see with players over time. I feel like that's why everyone ends up becoming more and more passive, as they get exposed to too much information. It's almost like, you know what? If you feel like the play's there, just go for it, caPs. That's all I want to see. I don't want this like brainiac caPs that's going to be the perfect mid laner. I just want to see the raw, like, I'm better than you caPs. That's the caPs I want to see.
Let's keep that point going. I've got an analogy for you. Everyone's going to be able to appreciate this because of the last 2 years. Everyone knows the famous memes that, like, you open Netflix, there's a million shows, but you can't find one to watch. You just scroll. Everyone knows you open up a food app, you just scrolling because the problem is one thing isn't obvious. There isn't a thing that's like, right, I've got to get that. Or there isn't just 3 choices and you pick the best of the 3. You keep thinking because there's endless choices. Keep going, keep going. This is actually a thing, by the way. There's an old school League of Legends example people might fuck with if they're from season 1 and season 2. It isn't actually a troll, by the way. Chowster, if you ever talk to him, was a really intelligent guy with some really actually mega like advanced ideas. But his problem was he kind of thought like that, Tom. Eventually he got to the point where he sort of thought you could make the correct decision in all scenarios. And it's like, dude, you are just playing a video game at the end of the day. Like, it's not fucking chess. Like, you haven't got 10 minutes to think about a thought. You have to just, sometimes you have to sort of int, because guess what? The int was you thought you saw a play and you went for it, and it turned out the player wasn't there, right? So I would say the analogy, obviously the contrast here, is Hylissang and Perks. That's the reason why, if you noticed last year, I even told you, I don't worry that Perks ints, because the impulse to do that int, maybe your skill level's not at the right level right now, maybe he's playing the wrong champion, maybe people don't play off him, but when it's all there, that impulse is what will make the genius play. That's when he'll do the LeBlanc catch on someone that should never be there, that turns the whole game. So to me, yeah, again, it's just about philosophy. I hope caPs gets this, and that's why I say I actually think the team fits what you're saying, because I think the good thing about this team is you're not going to waste 1 second thinking, right, well, in our team, it's like last year's team, oh, we could play through any lane, we could no, in this team, you know exactly which way your bread is buttered, as we say in England. Like, it's all about caPs and Broken Blade. Let's be real, like, these are the lanes you're playing through. So now you know that, let's just start figuring out the little pieces and let's get it going. Because I want to ask you one last thing, which is this. To me, the most controversial signing, obviously, is Flacked in the bot lane as the ADC. Right? Rich on one of my other shows had an outrageous thing, but he probably did do this just to make like a crazy. He said something like he could think of. He said he could think of 20. I think it was. I think he said 20. Now listen, I don't know if I'd go with 20. Listen, but at the same time, I was underwhelmed by this signing. Obviously, I wasn't in the scrims, so there's nothing to hype me. And just from watching week 1, like, I don't think there's much there, but I do think Targamas is good enough probably to offset it. Like, where are you at on the Flacked issue, and what are you expecting from him?
I mean, I thought he looked fine. Like, he didn't worry me. He looked like a stable LEC level 80 carry, in my opinion. So I'm like, I don't watch ERLs. Like, I watch so little ERL that I shouldn't even say that I watch any ERLs, which is like, so I pretty much just only watch LEC, and I'm judging him based off those 3 games. I think he looked way better than like Xmatty. So I would want to know who are these 20 names and where are they? Because I'm sure that Xmatty would be somebody who people would consider to be
on the list. Yeah,
he would be on the list, right? Because he was with Cave Corp. They won all the titles. Obviously, when you're winning as an 80 carry, you're going to look better. But I mean, I was pretty disappointed with Xmatty's performance. He looked nervous. He didn't look like he was ready. I think that sometimes like confidence can be more important than your actual skill. When you get to like the LEC level, you have to actually go into it believing that you're good enough and you're able to compete. I think he has that. It seems like he just has that like edge on his shoulder where it's like that edge where it's like, I'm good enough to be here. I'm going to make sure that I'm good enough to be here. I think that belief is really important. So when I saw him play, I was fine with the performance. I was like, yeah, I don't expect him to be the best in the league, but it doesn't look like he's going to be the guy that's holding them back if the rest of the team is destined for greatness.
I don't think he's going to carry any games, so I'll say that. No, what I'll say is I'll tag on to your point there. I'll trigger all the fans now, because in my opinion, the person who showcased the phenomenon you're talking about last split was fucking Adam on Fnatic. I don't care what any of you say. You can all go back and watch the games on fucking freeze frame and get your clean Xbox out. It was overrated as fuck. Like, what he did was, in the context of what a pure rookie with no experience should do, yes, he overperformed. He was good. He was really good. But the idea he was anything approaching a complete player, like, I think genuinely he played with the beginner's mindset of, like, he almost didn't know that he wasn't supposed to succeed in some of those scenarios or with some of those champions. It's like, I was waiting. It's almost sad he's not on Fnatic, because I always wait for the downfall to come when it's with the same team so the fans can get the fucking revenge. Like, spoiler, I'm just going to go ahead and say it now. I think the Adam guy, if you want to talk and swap over now, I just think he'll just end up being just a middle of the road fucking top laner, or maybe even slightly below. Like, I don't think he's going to be a star personally in the league. So, like, I actually thought people rode that narrative a little bit too far. And for me, it was one of those ones where it's like, I get he's winning and I get that he's doing things that shouldn't be possible for a rookie, but like, eventually, I don't buy that it continues personally.
Yeah, so I feel like there's two different things that you have going for you when you play League of Legends, right? Like there's your intuition, like that ability to just recognize, like, oh, this guy is killable, or just like not be thinking about the jungler. It's like, oh, this guy stepped too far forward. Just recognize it and pounce on that situation that you see present itself in the game. I feel like he has really good intuition, and he's playing with like almost no, like none of the knowledge that's supposed to back it up. But I feel like that's good enough. Like a lot of the time, like that's good enough. Obviously, to become great, you're going to need to have both, and you're going to have to balance it where you're smart enough to really like perceive what is going on in the game, but you also are able to trust yourself when you see players make mistakes and when you see these opportunities come about in the game. I feel like Adam had like very limited knowledge of different top lane matchups, like how things are supposed to go, and he just played off field. He's like, yeah, I'm Darius. Oh, I feel like I can flash on this guy. And we even saw it in the game that he played versus Fnatic. It feels like that's the reason why he always gets the best of Wunder, is he doesn't view it as, oh, Wunder is this fucking god of top lane in Europe. He is this, he has the role of like, what? I mean, it's either him or Soaz. It's the best top laner in the history of Europe, right? There's only two players that you could even talk about in that conversation. And he just plays like any other game. He's like, oh, I'm Darius, you're Gwen. Like, if you make a wrong mistake, I can kill you because my champion is just stronger in the early game. I just feel like this is just not the team for him. Like, I liked him on a team like Fnatic where he could be surrounded by people that could help that other side of him. Like, he doesn't have to make decisions in that team. When he gets a lead, that's good enough. It's like, oh, you won your lane. Well, our bot lane's probably winning, and our mid lane like knows what the fuck he's doing as well. So it's all good. Like, Bippo will lead you. Niski will tell you what to do. The team will figure out what the play is, and you just have to do your role. Now I feel like he's going to get leads, and who's going to be the one to shepherd him into the positions that he needs to be in to win games, to like use that lead to win the game. Because I don't feel like he knows it personally. Obviously, the hope is that Synkrov is an intelligent enough player, but he's not done it at this level before. So even though Synkrov looked good, it's different winning a game in ERLs and winning EU Masters than it is winning an LEC playoff game. There's just completely different levels of play, especially when you're dealing with the type of teams that you're going to be competing against if you end up getting there. So I think the problem with Adam is that, like, I expect him to still do well, win lanes that he's not supposed to, like, have like some pressure in the game, but I just don't think it's going to translate into anything. I think he's going to get strong, and then there's going to be like a mid game lull. They're going to get into a team fight, lose it, and then BDS is going to end up being like a bottom 3 team.
Yeah, listen, I will say, coming into the split, I would have personally, I mean, I did like a ranking with it, Rich, on my other show. Like, I think I had them like middle of the table, basically, BDS. Like, but I wasn't hyped like other people were. Like, I don't really know. Here's the problem I have with this squad as a whole with Dom, is like, in isolation, I can see a logic for each player, not only just being in LEC, but potentially even being on a good team that wants to do things. But I think this is an example of where LEC has actually gone way too far the other way from LCS. There's too many rookies here. There's too many ARL players here. Like, dude, where's my structure? Like, who can I rely on in this team? Nobody. Like, in fact, even the hype of most of the players is just from what they did in the RL. So what I'm saying is, I'm just going to get all the lottery tickets, and I'm just going to hope I win with all of them at once. But like that's not, I don't think League of Legends works that way. Like personally, I think you've got to have a couple of like core veterans that like make. Basically, I'll give you the Counter-Strike analogy. In Counter-Strike, I usually want my veterans actually to be the more supportive elements because they set the structure and they have so much experience. As you say, they can sort of help a star learn how to become a greater star. And if I want some stars, listen, yeah, I can chuck some young guys in there at like star positions to hope they have good seasons. But I can't sort of make almost the whole team just distinct players all brought together and just hope they all get. Because in this sense, like, who are they learning from? Like each other? Like they're not. Like you just want to mix it. Yeah. Listen, if Grab, I will say this. Here's what I'll say as a statement. If Grabs can actually make this a contender, I'll give him massive credit in this particular case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's what you're hoping for is that you have a coach like Grabs that has won so much and knows what that winning culture, that winning formula is. Like he's just been exposed to it enough that he can impart this onto this team and help bring them over the edge. But I just feel like it's so much different when you have it outside of the game, when you're experiencing something, you have a game that feels awful to play and then you go into a review after with that like mental burden on you and try to learn it afterwards. I think it's really hard to improve like that. And that's why I feel like that's been something that not many coaches have been able to do. I mean, it's pretty much just Mad Lions that's been able to build that from like having, random rookies just come in and then them being able to actually teach the rookies the game. I don't feel like that's something that's supernatural for a lot of people. So I think it's really hard to have that type of formula. So I think generally they're going to have a rough time, especially in spring. Like they're going to have to really have somebody stand out as, the guy that just knows what to do. They need that confidence in game. They need the guy that is going to be able to figure out when the mistakes are happening in real time and correct them before they actually lead to losses.
The one player I want to ask about on this team before we swap to one of the bigger teams, that maybe we'll go to Fnatic next. I want to ask about Synkrov, the jungler, as you mentioned before. Here's my problem, right, Dom? I've also learned, like, and Monty told me this years ago, because I used to always say on these shows, like, I always go like, I'm not an expert about League of Legends. And he would go like, obviously you're not in the sense that, you couldn't like coach a team or be high level analyst. And he said, but in terms of watching the game and talking, like you watched loads and loads of the games, you know how to talk about and model it and stuff. And one thing he said basically was, I think you're also really good at sort of parsing what other people say and seeing what makes sense. And if it makes sense, you add it to your knowledge base and you build. So basically one thing I'll say is this. I noticed certain blind spots in the people I considered the most knowledgeable and analytical. And that doesn't mean if you're a fan, I'm saying I know more. I'm actually saying I can just sort of see like, oh shit, you could actually be even better if you sort of fix this leak. Here's the leak that everyone in Europe who's an expert about the ERLs has. Dude, they've got to stop telling me that like every fucking split, there are 3 or 4 genius fucking junglers who just path the whole game and they know from minute one to like, because he was one of the ones I kept hearing in that group of like, oh, it's pathing those so insane. And I watched a couple of games, listening, it was good. But to me, like, ERL is a step down. I know we're hyping the best teams, the Carmine Corps of the world, like maybe they should be in LEC, but the other competition you play, like, I wanted to get your thoughts because you obviously are a jungler, you have the jungler's eye. To me, I think Synkrov has potential. I would have signed him to an LEC team. Even this level, I think is probably the right one. I don't know if I'd probably sign him with like traditional lanes that are already good or something, and see how that goes. But I actually look at it and it's like, I haven't seen in the game so far this genius that they're trying to describe, and I really have my question marks about the idea. Like I said, what do you think it is? What is their blind spot, Dom, that these experts, who, by the way, they are experts, they know way more than me and about the game and the scenes. Why do they always, it's jungle especially, I notice, jungle and support are the two most overrated. They always think these roles, they don't just have good players who have to be in the LEC. It's like, this guy's going to be the next, like, they act like it was like El Yoya. You could really come in and just be the absolute best. Like, you'll just be the best tomorrow. What do you think on this?
I'm not exactly sure because I haven't seen him play in the ERLs enough to like notice what they're actually picking up on in real time. Okay. But I mean, I'll just say that overall on his performance, I thought that he was doing decently intelligent things. I think that, I mean, out of the games, right, he had played 2 good games to start. The third game was not it. But overall, I just felt like this guy, I mean, he's a pretty good jungler. He understands what's going on and he capitalized on the right things. I just feel like there's a level of confidence you get when you're playing in the ERLs and you're winning all the time, and you're playing against those players and you're better than them. And I just feel like when you're also going to war with people that know what the fuck is going on, you're not like, there's not going to be this eureka moment where you're going to be able to outsmart them. Like a lot of times you're just going to have to beat them straight up. Like they're going to know everything that you're going to know, and it's just going to be a confrontation as to like, who's going to make the minor decisions in fights that are going to win it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if he'll be able to outsmart some of the people that, like, when you put him against the Mad Lions team, for example, and you have El Yoya there, and you have Kaiser, and Kaiser seems like he's the mid game genius. I mean, you put anyone on Mad Lions, like Mad Lions literally looks the same. Like, if you took off their nameplates and you put the old, like, you put Humanoid mid and you said, I'll be like, oh, Humanoid's like trying some things out, he's playing some Yasuo. Like, I wouldn't be like, this is a completely different team. Like, you just added 2 rookies in carry positions that have never played, competitive or played in LEC before. Those types of players aren't going to just let you shit on them in terms of like rotations or like doing a creative lane swap or getting a good herald. They're not going to do that. Or even if they do, it's not going to be often enough for that to be a distinct advantage. So I just think that sometimes people like overcomplicate the game. And yeah, if somebody's making a bad decision, it's a lot easier to make a good decision over them. But if 2 people are making a good decision, a lot of times it comes down to like the fine points, which aren't like overall macro concepts. It's more just instinct and just recognizing things like in the moment.
Yeah, I think you tied it together beautifully. And let's do Mad Lions then, since you brought them up. Right, obviously, first of all, people will have seen in some of the games, obviously, El Yoyo was popping off, and apparently that guy is just going to have, like, low-key, considering this is going to be, after this, the first 3 splits, fucking hell, what an entrance to the LEC. Like, and by the way, funnily enough, he wasn't told to me as a genius from the RLs. He was told, like, yeah, he's a good prospect. But like, I was even hearing people saying, maybe they've overreached, going for the rookies again. I'll tell you what, I'm going to obviously not overreact to the first 3 games, just add in with Vitality. But I will make this statement. If at the end of this split, Mad Lions are actually contending for the title, even if they don't make the final, if they're really close in 3rd place, I actually have to put Mac up in my estimations. Because to me, at the moment, I have him more like a sort of Dylan Falco, which is if you give him like the lesser talents, like some good players, but not a G2 super team. You give him some good players, he'll figure out how to play, which lanes to play through, how to neutralize the problems. Basically, he'll make the most of what he's got. But I didn't know, is he like is he the kind of person who could have a team that could go at Worlds, etc., when you're playing against the best of the best? And sometimes in that scenario, to make an extreme analogy to what you said before, now you actually have to do everything right and outthink them, and they're better than you. So it's like even harder to do, It's not even like a simple solution, do this, guys. I have to say, I'm so impressed, even after these first 3 games, with what you just said there, which is, I thought the pieces he'd replaced, it's like, there's no way. What are the odds that with these pieces, they can actually just immediately, like, especially with Rika in middle, like, there's surely no way, like, Humanoid was Mad Lions, everyone thought, I was even hearing, maybe Kazi does some of the shot calling. So I was thinking to myself, this is a bridge too far. This is thinking you can go 3 times and go bottle lightning a 3rd time in a row. Oh, I've got it again. Oh, I'll just do it every year. And it's like, to me, I was like, no way. But I have to say, dude, he's doing it somehow. Like, I have to put some of the credit to him, because I have to figure he's thinking what type of a player he wants, how he wants to coach them, how you structure it. It can't just be the players. It's all different players at this point. There's only, as you say, Kaiser out of all the like big name players that remain.
Yeah, I don't know. I was really impressed with Mad Lions. Even though they lost to SK, like, I felt like they were still getting good fights when they were playing against 2 GAs and a Chemtech Soul. So that game looked completely fucking doomed, and they were still able to compete. And yeah, sure, they made some mistakes, but for some reason, like, I came away from this thinking more of them than, for example, like Fnatic. Like, Rogue's strength of schedule was too weak for me to really take too much away from it. Like, yeah, they beat 3 of the worst teams in LEC. Okay, I mean, that's something. I want to see how they play against good teams. I think for Mad Lions, I mean, they played Fnatic, or they played Vitality. They shit all over them. I thought that was a pretty commanding first game. The way they did it too with Yasuo and Karthus, that takes balls to first game that you have a rookie on stage. Yeah, we're just going to play Yasuo Diana, and you're not going to play an AD carry. You're actually going to play Karthus. People will tell you, I mean, people have said, oh, well, if you watch ERLs, Unforgiven actually does play Karthus. I mean, you still have to fit it all together and make it work on an LEC stage. So I was really impressed with Mad Lions. I mean, they look like the best team. They look like they actually have like an identity as a team. They know what the fuck they're doing at other points in the game. And even though Fnatic won 3-0, I didn't really see that in them. It felt like they kind of like, they just won because they had better players. Like Upset and Hilly played really well, and they would just eventually use that to carry their influence into the mid game. They just win because this guy's like really strong and they're popping off. I didn't feel like they had that same like team philosophy. It's like, okay, we're in the mid game. What are we doing? Like Kaiser's roaming, putting down wards. They're grouping up. They're playing a 1-3-1. Like they were actually playing like a fucking team. So I think Mad Lions like was probably the most impressive team to me, even though they did drop a game to SK, which they probably shouldn't have.
I also love as well, because I'm obviously a historical fan of sports and esports teams, and trying to. One thing I love doing is A/B testing. I love when we take a piece out and we get to see what that builder piece is like with a different concept, like essentially control group test. So one thing I've been really enjoying as well is another reason I didn't think Mad Lions could do it is I bought that narrative that Humanoid was Mad Lions. To me, Humanoid was like the backbone of Mad Lions, and then Kaiser was like the artist just fucking painting the canvas over the top and doing all the genius moves. Kaiser still does them all now. In fact, the joke is, he's another guy willing to int. Dude, he had a couple of games where he just kept inting for no reason or Nautilus. Like, what the fuck are you doing? But I'll tell you what he's doing. He's trying the really aggressive style that everyone wants to see from a fucking support. And so to me, if they have it on tap that they're not even just going to play at all conservative, like this team, it does have the sight set on the top. And also, I think the other thing for me is, I think long term, I don't know how much I believe in the squad. Like I say, the problem I have is I have a philosophy that still has not been broken, which is you have to be an absolute elite mid to win the LEC. It's yet to fail me so far. That narrative has carried me all the way to this point. So I don't buy yet that Rika can do it. Where are you on that one?
I mean, I haven't seen more of him. Like I said, I only really saw 3 games of this guy in my like entire time watching him. So it's just like it's way too early for me to tell. But I think that if you have a good enough support in jungler, I don't know if you have to be a super elite mid. I mean, I don't think Perks was in like absolute god mode when he won LEC in 2020 spring, for example. I just feel like the team was just good. So I don't know. I think that from what I saw, it's left to be determined. I'm not really one way or the other. I don't think he can't be an elite mid. I'm not convinced that he'll be an elite mid. I just think that the team plays really well, and I feel like that's what's going to win you a championship. If you're just a better team, like you just know what the fuck you're doing at all points. They look like they know what they're doing. Also, I think it's really smart the way they kind of approach things. Even though the Karthus like mid, I was giving it credit. Like it takes balls to pick that. Or sorry, the Karthus AD carry.
Yes.
But that idea I think is really interesting, right? You have Kaiser who wants to roam, and then you give your AD carry an AD carry that can just 1v2 the lane. It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like Unforgiven does it. It's almost genius to let him play something where he can actually just play without a support. Like he doesn't need to do anything in that game. Like he can just relax, play the game, and Kaiser will just roam. I see you laughing. What's so funny about that?
Because the second you said that, I had flashbacks to Genja playing the fucking Urgot and just letting Edward just roam around the jungs.
Yeah, that was against me. Yeah,
listen, all I'm saying is that was probably the prototypical example of exactly what you're talking about. It's like he can just handle it 1v2, and so then we get an extra edge, we can go around. I'll also say as well, by the way, that's the one move I'm shocked at. Right, everyone who were fans thought at the end of last year, well, Rogue and Mad Lions won't sell any players because they don't have to. They've just come at the top of LEC. Spoiler, that's not the way business works. And if someone gives you an offer, especially an offer over the odds, you just sell the player because that's how business works. This is the one point I make, though, Dom, and it'll be my last Mad Lions point. We can move on. I am shocked that nobody fucking went all out for Kaiser. Dude, to me, like I said, the 2 players, like I've never gotten too hyped by Shadow. Even El Yoya, look, I've only had 1 year of him. To me, Kaiser is like, dude, he's like the next genius fucking support from Europe. Like, how these other teams were in an insane bit. Like, if I was G2, I wouldn't be Kazi I was going for. I'd be going for fucking Kaiser, dude. This guy looks mental.
Yeah, I mean, he just looks like he gets better. I don't know. He just always gets better. And normally you see people hit the wall at some point, or they, get better for a period of time, then they get a little bit worse. It just seems like he's just meant to be an elite support in Europe. I don't see it changing anytime soon. I mean, it seems like he's too smart and he's too confident about like what he thinks. Like if he thinks that something's a good roam, he'll just fucking do it. And if it doesn't work, then maybe he'll assess it afterwards. But he like knows what he wants to do in the game. And I love seeing that determination and that mindset within a player. I feel like that is super important.
Yeah, I would put him in my category that I like designed the last couple of years where listen, he actually skill-wise is very good as well, but even if his skills weren't on there, dude, he has actually in the Perks SOAS category of like, he just knows how to win the game. Like he just makes game-winning players, which by the way, spoiler, every fan will never understand this. Some of those end up being ints because you haven't got 100% execution rate. No one does. So, okay, let's go on. I think for me now, the team we have to go to, let's just get the Fnatic one out the way. You've sort of hinted at it earlier that like, because they've gone 3-0, obviously people are going to do the opposite of Vitality. We're like, oh my God, 18-0 incoming. Like, first of all, shut the fuck up. No one's going 18-0 ever again in the LEC. Have you seen how stacked it was? Spoiler, the split Fnatic went 18-0. There were like 2 teams maybe could have beaten them, and then they didn't. That was it. Like, even like 4th down, they were just farming motherfuckers. Like, LEC was a lot less competitive back then. Now, first of all, not only is no one going 18-0, 8-0. But this team ain't going 8-0. I'm telling you that right now. Because I'm sort of with you a little bit. Look, I do think that unlike the Vitality one, where there was more like uncertainties, like no one knows how Perks will play, how will these pieces fit together. I will say, think about earlier on when you were listing off players that could be listed as the best. You actually listed 3 players from Fnatic. You listed off Upset, Hylissang, and Humo. One thing I'll say is this, and this is where people don't understand. Thorin always gives credit where he actually thinks it's due. I said in past years, this is the end of Fnatic. No one wants to play there anymore. They don't have the money, and all these other orgs, if they play their cards right, you keep the pieces or you outmaneuver them, and especially, you never give them your talent. Well, whatever they've done in Fnatic, whether they bid over the odds, whether they got the right pull, they probably got the right pieces in the right order. What a fucking amazing GMing job this was in the offseason. I even personally think the Wonder signing was genius, because listen, the other pieces are almost guaranteed to be good. So I actually don't even need Wonder to be good. Like, if he gets good, now we have the super team. Now we can fucking roll. But if he's just like up and down, it's not even going to matter like it did in G2. So in my opinion, I think amazing GMing job. And I this is where I agree with you, though. I haven't seen it yet in the server. I agree with you, mate. When you ram that many talented players, you should actually win some games just by how fucking good the players are. Like, one player makes a play, someone wins a team fight because you're more skilled. But what I haven't seen yet, and this is the problem, when you have the super team, obviously the dreaded curse of the super team is... And in this case, it's a super team historically. Obviously, people like Wonder couldn't be in a super team from last year. But the problem and the curse always is, it's like the earlier discussion. Which lane do you play through? How do you play the game? Who is the focal point? Who should we draft for? What do we do when we're behind? Who is the shot? Like, there's too many questions because you've got too many luxuries. You have to sort of take a while to figure out which you want. So I haven't seen the cohesion yet as a squad. But I will say, if the baseline is this, because of how the players are, it'd be hard not to make the finals, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they kind of already know who to play around. I mean, I think it's just the bot lane. I think you just play around Upset and Hilly. I think they're so good. And when you think about it, it's like, what bot lane is actually going to contest them?
None.
In LEC. Like try to think of one bot lane that could be as good as them.
Let me think. If I have to go competitive, let me think.
Yeah. What is the best bot lane outside of them?
I'm not even joking, and this is going to show how bad it is. I actually think the next best is either Unforgiven Kaiser or Comp and Trimby. I'm not even trolling. It might even be Comp and Trimby, dude. And that goes up saying these are far less proven, and this is a real bot lane that existed.
Yeah, so that's my issue is, like, last year it looked like they had way more competition and they're already pretty good. Yes. Now you remove Hansama, you remove Reckless, like, and in terms of like laners, those are people that know what the fuck they're doing. I just don't think that there's another bot lane that can play even close to as good as them. So their upside is super high. A bot lane, I think that they should just keep that as just the way that they want to play. And when you look at like how Wonder plays, I don't think that Wonder is like a super ego player where he's going to be like, I need to fucking carry the game. If they're winning and he has to play Renekton, or like, I think he can do the job of a top laner. He can be that top laner that is going to just do his role in the game and allow his bot lane to actually really thrive. I mean, I think that that's one of Wonder's biggest strengths is he kind of has all the little, like, you know, abilities to do different things within the lane. Obviously, his laning has not been as good as it was before. Like the Gwen game versus Darius, I mean, he's for some reason always loses to Adam. It's fucking hard. It's hard as a Wonder supporter to like watch those games, but I still really think he's good. I still think Wonder is a solid player. And when you talked about the Fnatic GMing job, I think that one thing that they actually do is they're less willing to give up on players quickly. Like, Humanoid's a good signing, right? Razork is a good signing. Those are people that, like, you're probably having to spend to get. But they got upset off him going 10th, and they got Wonder when everyone in the community was saying that he's dog shit. Everyone was acting like he was like, oh, he lost to Adam. Well, shit, he should probably just retire. What the fuck? Like, this guy, like, you don't go being the best top laner in Europe for 4 years and then have, like, I mean, he wasn't that bad through all of 2020. It wasn't like he was just running it down, or 2021. He wasn't running it down for all of 2021. He had a bad series versus Adam, and suddenly everyone just wants to, like, ship him off to ERLs. Like, oh, go play WoW, you fucking asshole. Like, everyone was just losing their fucking mind. And it's like, dude, it's still Wonder. Like, you should still want Wonder unless you have somebody who you think is going to be really good. Like, I mean, I'm still on the Wonder train. So for me, I think their bot lane is just going to be too fucking good for this team to not be top 2. I can't see a world where they're not top 2. It would take Vitality really getting their shit together to that, like, next level of dominance, and Mad Lions just being better than every team as a team. to have them not be in that conversation to me. The only thing I'm kind of worried about is Razork seems a little bit lost. It seems like he's not played with, a team that had this much strength on it.
No.
And it feels like doesn't have the same confidence that you would want him to have. So hopefully that gets shored up over time. But I think that overall, like, they'll be fine. I mean, when you have upset Hilly on your team, and Hilly's just in absolute god mode, like, this guy is just fucking nuts when it comes to engages and just like seeing angles and getting fights going. And then upsets just seems so like, he seems so locked in. He seems so perfect right now in terms of like, I'm going to not die and do a fuck ton of damage. Like, he's just going to be the AD carry that needs to, that they need. So I don't know. I think that Fnatic is completely fine. I just hope that Razork starts playing a little bit better.
Yeah, I will say that's also why I personally think the Wunder signing is genius, because you're gambling, as you say. Basically, it's like the Bitcoin example with perks again. You're gambling that this was something that was very valuable before and it'll become valuable with you, but you get it cheaper. Like in this scenario, the joke is if he becomes all pro, it'd be ridiculous signing. Like actually loads of people should have been bidding. And look at the team you've added him to. In theory, the other 4 players were all among the best, if not the best, at their role last year. So what you're saying is, even if it doesn't totally work out, I've probably got enough for the rest of the team. And I'll totally agree with what you just said there. In my opinion, people are doing this thing where the problem they have with Wonder is they want him to be early 2019 Wonder, and I don't know if he'll ever be that again, because in my opinion, that was the Wonder that had still come off in past years. He had to be, he had to win lane. He had to be like one of the forces in the game when he was in fucking Splice, when he was even in G2 when they had the whack bot lane. Like in that world, he was just a star player. He was expected to play like a star player. As soon as he got into the super team, after that first split, he was always the lane that actually was willing to sacrifice and take a stupid pick or just let all the resources go to mid or bot. So in my opinion, the wonder of the last few years, I even think they've got him to the right team here, dude. He's going to be like Bwipo was. He's going to play without all the resources, without all the attention. He's still going to play confidently, but he's not just going to play like he's just a punching bag. He's going to get kills. He's going to have mad matchups that occasionally work that shouldn't. And it means that actually you can still give the resources to the bot lane. You can still play through Humanoid. And there's one last detail that I think people might get lost on. The one concern I initially had on this team was I thought you might have too many players who have their own vision of the game, because you've got Razork. Look, I think that's why he was one of the best junglers last year. There's no way the coach was telling him all that shit. He had a great intuition for the game. Humanoid, like I said, it seemed like he was Mad Lions. Like everything was based around him. And then everyone knows Hylissang's just going to go for his players. And Upset, this is where people fuck up who haven't been players. You know, when everyone goes, oh, whenever Upset's in any of his teams, he just like it's like Doublelift. He just demands all the resources and everything. No, that's what happens, because guess
this
what?
Team sucks.
The reason why Doublelift became like that is because he was in teams that fucking sucked. So what happens is eventually you get sick of other people's ideas and you go, you know what? I've got one idea. Give me all my picks, all my resources. I know I can carry the game in a more limited fashion, maybe because I have to do it every time, but just give it to me. Give it to me and I'll do it, right? I tell you what, I guarantee you, because I know this is what happened with Doublelift when he went and he played with Bjergsen. I know it's what it was like, dude, even when he went and played with people like better junglers, etc. The day that someone comes along and goes, it's all right, bro, I got it this game. You're like, oh, the weight off my shoulders. That's what I've wanted the whole time. I wanted to support that I didn't just have to tell what to do all the time. I want my fucking mid laner to tell me when to rotate mid and leave a wave. Like, that's actually, believe it or not, what these dudes want, because they know they don't win when they're on their own as a fucking AD carry trying to 1v9 in the modern day. Like, that ain't happening. Like, so as a result, dude, I think it's going to work perfectly in that sense. Like, I think Upset's going to love this fucking team. And as you say, at the moment, he's just playing like an ADC should, which is perfect. Just perfect.
I mean, he's perfection. I just wanted to jump in on something just for the meme's sake. So what you were saying pretty much was that Wonder was in absolute god mode up until about August 26th, 2019, which happens to be...
Oh, what happened? Some release of World of Warcraft is amazing. Come on.
That happens to be the date that World of Warcraft Classic was released.
Right, so, okay.
That's a crazy coincidence, Thorin. You hit it
is,
right on the head there.
Yeah, after that, he was like, you know what, guys? I don't know if we should play through me anymore. Maybe I should kind of just find my spots, you know? Every now and then I'll have a game, you know? But the thing is, I'm playing Sacrificial this game, which hasn't been played at all. It's just came out the fucking grind. Like, yeah, no, I watched the demos, yeah. But this, I'm feeling like Ord in this game. Just, I'll put me on Ord. It's not for me. No, okay.
Yeah.
The other thing as well about this team, though, is I also think this is going to be the year. I know Fnatic fans skew Reddit because there's too many of them, dude. So they always make all the G2 opinions look stupid, and then all the Fnatic ones. So they always overrate everyone. This is actually the year. Are you ready, everyone out there? This is the intervention. This is the year when you are actually going to, for real, have to say Yamato Cannon is one of the best coaches in the West. Because, dude, I've seen him with too many teams now. He's another person who, in my opinion, the team's always overperformed slightly. And he's even now done it with real talents. And this is the first team where he's had the true cadre of superstar talents. And quite frankly, it hasn't gelled yet. But when it does, what are they going to have left to say? Like, it's not like this was a whole... It's not like he took 4 players that play together and just added one. Dude... He's built all these teams. They've come all together again and again. I've no doubt he has a say in who some of the players who join are, what they do. Like, this is the year when people are going to have to break and realise he might years and years ago have just been a voice in a suit and maybe there wasn't as much substance. I think genuinely now, one thing I love about having him on my shows, dude, is he's got a little bit of LS in him. He has his own philosophy on the game. He has his own sort of crazy analogies he'll come up with or frameworks that other people aren't working with. Like, I think there's something to Yamato Cannon personally.
Oh, definitely. I mean, so I've had Yamato on a bunch of co-streams, and I feel like it's the way he presents himself. He's like very humble, and the way that he'll talk about things like, oh, you know, I don't know everything, you know, so I just try to put it all together, and like that's just his vibe. But then when you talk to him, you're like, wait, you just know everything about the fucking game. Like you're just somebody who can have a complete conversation. He was a fucking pro player at a point. Like he's not somebody who doesn't really understand concepts, and he's just like the morale guy that's like, okay, we're gonna like meditate, and he's gonna like give you a fucking speech. You're gonna go into the game ready for war. He's not that type of guy. Like he does that, but he also has the game knowledge, and he can solve disputes, and he has his own mentality about what he thinks the team should do. So I feel like just the way he presents himself makes the community think like, oh, he's not that smart, because everyone else who like is smart about the game in the community presents themselves as like, I am fucking right. If you contest what I say, then you're an idiot. That is like how every single one, like, and I don't necessarily hate that. I don't think anything's wrong with that. I know I do that at some points. I know LS fucking does that. I know Veteran does that. That's just what people fucking do, because that's kind of like the way that you get people to listen to you, especially if you're on streams and you're trying to get people to like actually understand what you say. But like, just because you're not like that doesn't mean that you don't know. It just means you have a different personality. So I feel like Yamato really gets like, he really just gets the short end of the stick because he's able to just actually present himself in a way that's more like sophisticated, more mature. Like he doesn't need to engage in that like petty, like I'm going to convince you because of the way I act type of stuff. He's just going to give you the real takes. He's just going to give you his real opinion. And yeah, no one's going to be right about everything. So just the fact that he says, oh, I don't know everything. It's like, yeah, no one does. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that he's less qualified or he doesn't know as much about the game. He's a fucking good coach.
Think about this. Not only did he obviously do a bang-up fucking job last split, where on paper everyone was saying this team might just fail completely with Whippo and Adam, but everyone's going to say to me, Dom, but Thorin, what about when he had all the talent in spring of last year? Look, when he had Self-Made and Nemesis, he's only a coach, not a miracle worker. It's the way if people have watched the content enough, they sort of know all the references.
Wait, Nemesis? He didn't have Nemesis at the time.
Oh, sorry, no, wait, yeah, I'm forgetting. Yes, that's right, he had this. But even so, look, Self-Made alone, just make that joke, cut the Nemesis part. He's only a coach, not a miracle worker. If you haven't noticed, and I said this a couple of years ago, Dom, but I tell you what, it's fucking aged like fine wine. Self-Made is in that forgiven category, where he's so good at the game mechanically, you have to always like gamble that he's going to be on a good team. People have to take their chances on him and they have to give him resources. The downside is you are only coaches. Like, I'll make this a serious point. You are only his coach. You're not getting a fucking therapist's couch out and asking what's going on here, dude, or why do you think, or why are you aggressive? Those are things that have to figure themselves out. Essentially, Self-Made has to figure that out. So to me, that as a serious point, I don't blame him for that split personally. Like I think that was a split that was always somewhat doomed to fail. And if you look at the other splits, like I said, I think he's always performed over the odds.
Definitely.
Right, okay, let's do this then. Because out of the other teams, one of the few teams, like, because as usual, they're where you'd expect them to be. Who would expect Excel to be 1-2 after the first week, Dom? This is the problem with this team, right? In the past, this is actually the reason why I never gave up on Youngbok. Because I looked at the old Excel teams before last split, and I was always like, I mean, dude, he's not got the talent. Like, if he even gets close to the playoffs, which he was always like one game off, That's probably a good coaching job. Like, look who he's working with. He was always working with players who, spoiler, always going out of the fucking league straight after. No one else picked up his players and made them all LEC. So to me, he was always doing a good job generally. But when he got the players last split, then it was the ultimate cock tease of all time because he got them slightly after the split began. So you could always in your brain go, but what if? And then also, they were the team that the joke was they had the most games lost that looked like they could win them. And so that was always the ultimate tease, like, oh, but they could have done, oh, if they did just won 3 more, oh. And so my problem is this. It's shit or get off the pot time for XL and for Youngblock. Now you have the same squad. I don't know. Like, I don't mind the Finn change as much as other people do. I did think Cry's had some, like, potential, but I didn't think he always showed it in the game. I don't hate the Finn one. I know he looked whack in NA. Spoiler, I don't know why we keep doing this. Loads of good European players just get worse than LCS. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of factors. It's a whole 25-minute discussion, usually with an NA coach who will do that. But this is the thing. With this squad now, there are no excuses. Like, especially with the league right now, I think the league has, like, pretty good parity in terms of, like, I don't think there's that many terrible teams. You named a couple of them earlier. But to me, if you can't make the playoffs in this particular split with this lineup, then maybe I have to start reevaluating, first of all, these players, maybe the potential. Maybe it's not potential. Maybe they do just win like half the games or 45% of the games. Maybe that is just who they are, Dom. Like, I sometimes feel like people take the idea that you could win the game and they grant you that win in the game. Then you got to do it. You got to get it done still, no matter what. So, like, I still have the moth to a flame fucking belief that XL can be something. In this case, probably the 5th best team if they get it together. My issue is, I also think there's a world where they just fucking rug pull me again and become like 7th. I'm like, bloody hell. Where do you think?
I mean, they're just 6th, 7th. They're in that tier. So, like, the way that I break down LEC is I think there's a bottom 3 teams. I think there's SK, BDS, Astralis. That, to me, I think that those are just the worst teams in the league. Then I see a top 5. I see, and this is not in any order before people fucking start losing their shit. Right. Like, Fnatic, Mad Lions, G2, Rogue, Vitality. Yes. Like, yes, Vitality went 0-3. They should still be a top 5 team in LEC. And then there's the 6 and 7, right? The 2 teams in the middle that will fight for that last playoff spot, which should be XL, Misfits. That's your competition right there. They just got to be better than Misfits. And honestly, this is the time where you should be better than Misfits, right? Like, this is the time, like, especially if Misfits is going like, we're not going to use Vander, we're using this new rookie support. They have Vetio, who's been playing for one split. I mean, XL has the supposed superstar AD carry. Everyone always talks about how good Patrick is, and Finn is to me an upgrade over Cries. So this is your team. Like, if you're not making top 6 here, then some of these players just need to go, or the coaching staff needs to go. I don't think it's that hard. You're mainly just competing with Misfits, and Misfits has had less time to get their whole thing together. Like, XL has been doing this project for how long? Like, how long has it been since they got Patrick? I don't know, like 3 years or something.
Yeah, ages, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's been 2 years. It just feels like a long time. Yeah, it feels like a long time. They've had him forever, right? Like, you brought Nuke Duck back last year. He's supposed to be the stable guy. He's supposed to be the guy that can, like, he's not going to beat all the top mid laners in LEC, but he's never going to actually lose you games. Like, he'll be good enough. And then you have your 2 young bloods. You've got Marcoon and Advian. Those guys were like kind of like the unsung heroes of last split for XL. Now you have your stable top laner who's now been a pro for like 2.5 years or something. That's your team. Like, if you're not doing it with this team, just something needs to change. Like, you don't have that much competition. People are getting better results with less than you at this point. So, yeah, I just think that they have one team to beat. It's Misfits. They have to be better than Misfits.
Yes, and then to tag on the point, as I said, the only concern I have is going 1 and 2, and they even did it in the most XL fashion. So let's just lose to fucking BDS, who I don't think is that good, and then let's just beat Vitality. Fuck it, like, why not just fuck around and win the game we shouldn't, lose the one that we should? So to me, the other angle is you kept 4 players identical from last split, so you should have way less ramp up time. You should be the team that by the mid, that I should know who you are completely by week 5. If by week 5 you haven't got it together, you're not getting the whole year from me. I'll start to be out on you at that point in time. We'll swap over though, because as you said, the obvious people in their tier is Misfits. I have to say, I know people will think, because last year they probably actually overperformed in the summer and they were actually looking quite dangerous. If people remember, they were 1 game away against Rogue for actually being in the upper bracket final. Like, they could essentially have qualified for Worlds immediately by doing that. So everyone's going to say, oh, but Vethio, by the way, here's a spoiler as well. If you really haven't figured out simple pattern recognition, everyone French mega overrates everyone French. So yes, if I have my boy Zabatine on, he's going to go fucking crazy, and it's going to sound like Vethio is like when when fucking LS has one of his fucking tug jobs over Chovy, and he's just everything's gonna be amazing and incredible and incredible over there. Like, but here's the problem. I think he's like a talented player. He hasn't fully figured out his game, in my opinion, and I think that's Misfits in general. I think it's actually a messy squad, dude. I don't buy it. Like, I think the solo laners are good. Zlatan, from what I saw in the RLs, did look like one of the better ones, but he also was on a very good team, as we discussed earlier. With junglers, I have a very hard time judging them from the best team. It's a lot easier for me if you sort of somehow do a hard carry job on a bad team. I can just tell you must be good. And then to me, like, I'm not a hater. Neon can play in the LEC. He's okay. He's never going to be a star, in my opinion. He's had plenty of chances. I don't know much about the support player. And so I've got to say, I think the bot lane's going to be fairly whack. And I think in general, listen, if they can do it, again, this is another team I'll give a lot of props to the coaching staff, actually, if they manage to do it. Because I actually think, personally, this just looks like a meh team. Like, I'm not vibing with this team to do any impact in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the one way that they could end up being really good is if here it stays at the level that he was last year. Because to me, I thought he was like one of the best top laners in Europe, especially when the role was as weak as it was last split. I thought he was really good. He obviously did not have a good week, but I mean, he looked pretty disappointed in that. I think that he's better than what he showed. And if Vetio continues his progression, I think that they'll be fine. Also, like, I was pretty impressed with Schlatten. I think that he played well. He played better than my expectations. I mean, I think he played better than Razork, for example, who is the guy that he's replacing. So I think that this team is fine. I just want to see like how they play. I want to see if Vetio can be that superstar. If he's not that superstar, well, then you have to start figuring out, like, do you really want to go the hear it route? Like, do you want to potentially change the bot lane to like a pairing that might just be good off the bat? I mean, to me, Neon to me is similar to Crown Chow, where I think they're both like pretty good. I think that they're both like, they at their absolute peaks, maybe they'll be like a fourth, third, but then most of the time they're like fifth, sixth, 80 carries in the league. And it's funny because if I said that to either of them, I'm sure that they would completely refute it and to say that they're better than the other guy. But they're the same tier to me. So, I mean, I think the team has the pieces to be decent, but I mean, they're in the same boat with XL where, like maybe there's not as much pressure on them because they are going with like a couple rookies, but I mean, I think that you definitely don't want to be seventh place. If you're seventh place with this roster, it definitely feels like, you're not performing up to expectations.
And I'll also just tag, as we move on to the team, on the point you made at the beginning, which is that no one's ever going to learn this lesson, Dom. Either I'm a boomer who's out of touch and I'm using like, maybe I'll give the credit. Maybe I'm like those NFL coaches who still don't go for it on fourth down and just punt every time and lose the fucking game, right? But my problem is this. Why are we still doing it where we get as many veterans out of the team and leave no veterans left? Like, in the same way I thought Vander, whether Trimby in scrims was better or not, should have been in Rogue and would have actually completed the team. Why they're kicking Vander from this team, I don't understand it, mate. Because in my opinion, you look at the squad, they have fuck all veterans. The veteran players Neon, for God's sake. Like, you've got to have some pieces, and that's obviously the role, in my opinion. It does it a little bit anyway, Dom. It just goes in and out of the more. I've got a problem with that.
It's fine.
Sorry, it's still on. But basically, yeah, that's the issue. Like, I feel like that. Like, I haven't got a piece in this team that I feel like it's reliable. Like, and Law's going to do it. There's certainly no one experienced, no one who's done it before. So again, to me, it's an also run. So if we swap over, right, of the few teams left, I thought a fun one to hit just because they had this shocking.
Actually,
victory.
Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about Vander because I just want to know
if you want to jump in.
I just want to know what this guy does wrong to like
I know.
always end him. He gets kicked from every team. Like every team that he's on, he plays, he looks pretty good. And then they're like, yeah, no, we'll find someone better. Oh, we just rather have a rookie. Like it just keeps on happening, right? It happened in H2K where he's like down to ERLs for a bit. Then he goes to Rogue and then it happens again. Now he's in Misfits. It happens again. It's like, dude, is this guy just like not performing well enough for you guys? To me, I feel like he's normally in the top five. He's in the top 5 supports in Europe consistently. Like, isn't that good if you're Misfits? Misfits, that's what you should be wanting. You should be wanting to have a top 5 support. Like you're a team that's competing for like 7th. Like that's better than average for your team. So I don't know. I don't know. Do you have any insight as to why you think that?
Theorycraft. Listen, from knowing him a little bit.
It.
This is the reason why I always thought back in the day he was the perfect support to pair with Forgiven. Because as you say, he's got all these great elements in his game, intangibles are through the roof. But the thing is, he's also a very agreeable person. And the downside of that is this, Dom. Sometimes you can almost invoke relationship dynamics here. If people don't project a frame of dominance, some people perceive that as weakness. And my vibe with him, unfortunately, is even though he can be like a glue guy type guy and a great guy in the look, I think people unfortunately take him for granted. And he's also a guy, this is a genius move if you're the support role. If you are a guy who contributes concepts to the team and you sacrifice for other people, the downside is this. It works in the game. Sometimes those players don't fully get what you're doing. And they actually think like, nah, he was doing fucking nothing. What do you mean? Like, and also, yeah, I came up with that idea. Like, he prompted me, but I knew it. And so the downside is this. I think they did exactly the same thing again that fucking Rogue did. I think Rogue did a bunch of scrims and G2 style went like, but look at the Trimby popping off and the mechanics. It's like, first of all, cocksucker, you are aware it's a support role. Unless you're like Hillesang, I don't need the mechanics to be that bonkers, mate. Like, it's not like the role I have to go crazy at. There's a reason why players were talking before about if I'm just a brain player, maybe I go to support like right now. Like, they weren't saying like because I'm sick at Thresh. Like, they meant like because I can just have mad impact on the map there. They were talking about experience, understanding the game. So the problem I have is I think they've done the same thing again. They've done an upgrade of mechanics. And in doing so, they've lost everything that they don't understand he brought to the game. Because I'm with you. His career makes no sense. It's like he's cursed or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, like, show that you're good enough. It's like, okay, I've done it. It's like, all right, well,
again and again.
Like, it's like, go back to the ERLs, you bitch. And then he comes back, it's like, oh, I'm good enough again. Like, I'm shitting on everyone again. And then it's like, no. Like, you need to prove it to us 18 times before you get a fucking starting position. It's like, I don't know if it's an age thing. I don't know if it's just because he's on the older end. And like Europe, it seems like Europe is starting to go the same way as like, Korea, where it's, you hit 25 and suddenly you're fucking dead. It's like you're 25, you can no longer play League of Legends. Sure, you could be like an NBA player, you could be potentially one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and play in the Super Bowl, but you can't play League anymore. You can play CS, which is a much more mechanically intensive game, but you can't play League anymore. I don't know. I think that maybe it's just his age where they're like, well, he's not going to get much better than he is right now. It's like, yeah, he doesn't need to. Like, he's good enough right now. Like, not every single player is going to be a gold mine. If you have a player like that on your team, find the gold mine elsewhere. Find the gold mine in jungle. Find the gold mine in top lane. Like, you don't need to find the gold mine in all 5 positions to be a good team.
You've nailed it on that. That was the other point I wanted to make. Teams, because if you talk to them, they all talk like this. They keep thinking every position has to potentially be able to play in their team for 5 years. So their logic would be like, look, Dom, maybe Vander's good for another year, but like, what do I do in 2 years? First of all, can we stop pretending this is the NBA from the 1980s and you play 10 years together? Almost every single team makes 2 changes every single offseason in the LEC, even if they fucking win sometimes. Sometimes you have to sell the players. So as a result, for real, the way League of Legends should work, in my opinion, is as you say, you get a couple of spots and you go, right, I'm going to gamble for the future as well as this year. Spoiler, in Misfits, they're basically doing that with 3 spots. Like 3 of them they're doing that with. So the idea you can't have one player who just fills what you need this year and can just do it this year. You can. It only needs to be thought of at certain positions as a 1-year deal. That's all you need.
And it's at certain points too in your team success. Like, yeah, if you're like one of these teams where, okay, you get to the point where now you're a top 3 team and you're going deep in playoffs, but you just don't have the bot lane that can compete with Upset and Hilly. Like, that's where you need to be in order to win the league. Sure. Then I think that it makes more sense to start making these adjustments because you've kind of reached your peak. But I feel like if you're Misfits, you're not at that point. Like, you need to focus on establishing yourself where you are. Be like a solid 4th, 5th place team within the league. Then you can start thinking about what do we need to do to go from being a 4th place team to a 2nd place team, to be a world's team, to be a 1st place team. I feel like they're just trying to do too many things too quickly. And when you do it, it just feels like you end up perennially stuck in that like 5th, 6th, like SK was before, where it's like, okay, I mean, you change crown shot for this guy. Okay, now you bring in limit, but you don't have like, oh, you have limit and crown shot, but now you have like another like treats is kind of good. You never end up progressing because you don't have this ability and you're not building on anything. You're just getting new players, throwing them together, and then you're just hoping that one of the lineups works out. It's like, oh, these guys are meant for each other. All their strengths complement each other perfectly, and they end up being a super team. But that's not how it's done. Like, if you look at how Mad Lions build their team, I feel like they're so smart about the players they pick up. They're like, we need this gap to be filled in this player. They're picking up players for a specific thing. Like, when they got El Yoya, they needed somebody who was more confident and had more of an idea of what he wanted to do in the early game. They thought that Shadow was a little bit too wild. They made a change that makes sense. I just don't know, like, the changes, at least to me, are not obvious within Misfits. Like, I don't know what they're going for when they go for a new player.
Sure. Now, the team I was going to bring up is, just because they had the big upset, was SK Gaming, because they're a team that if you look on paper, no one was raving that they'd do anything. They did, I will say, have a very tough schedule. Like, they did obviously play against, they started out against Rogue, who definitely not going to be a joke. We'll talk about them in a minute. They beat Mad Lions, who we talked about is actually probably the best team of the first week in terms of like eye test. And then they played Fnatic, who, again, like, look, these two rosters, I know League is a game about tactics. People, no, I'm sorry. When these two rosters play, it's actually just that the Fnatic one wins. That's actually how it works. In the same way as in the LCK, you know, like you're not just going to beat the Gen G lineup with the fucking ninth best team. It ain't going to happen. Like they can't. They almost can't lose. They have to really.
Yeah, like Dom 1 is not going to lose to Nong shit. Oh wait, never mind. They lost today. But you know what? You know, I understand the point.
All right,
like,
all right. Whatever. Listen, this isn't an LCK show, but I think Dan was a little bit overrated. But we'll get into that. Like, here's what we'll do.
Okay.
I want to talk about this. The problem I have with this SK team goes like this. I actually don't think they can even do this sort of thing going much further forwards. Because to me, this is an absolute nothing burger roster, dude. Like, this is a roster where it's like, I don't even hate all the players or dislike them all. But it's like most of this roster should be average or below average in the LEC. And then I look at like the makeup of the team as well. Where's the sort of flavor? Where's the spice? Where's the sexiness? What's going to come out? Basically, the only player I actually think, and by the way, he's overqualified to be on this team, is I don't know how Treats didn't get picked up by a different team. I thought that was obvious. Everyone else,
the worst fucking thing. That's
everyone
the worst
else,
fucking thing.
If this is a budget team, these are budget players. Like I don't hate them. I don't mind it. If that's the strategy of the org, it's the strategy of the org. But I have no expectations for this. I think this team, it's guaranteed they don't make playoffs for my money.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same with you. I just feel like it's not a recipe for success when your best player is your support. Like your best player is your support. What happens if Jesu just locks him in lane? What happens if Jesu just does something egregious?
By the way,
just
I think Jesu's the worst player in the team.
Yeah, I think so too, man.
I just think he is.
No, I think so too. Like I want to like him too. He seems like the type of guy that like he seems agreeable. He seems like passionate. Seems like he's trying really hard. There's nothing that like makes me just like immediate. There's nothing that triggers me about him. I just think he's just not that good. So I don't know. I feel like the recipe doesn't make sense. Also, I feel like Gilius is a better fit for like pop-off players than for what he has right now. Like I feel like
Gilius maybe have been in Misfits instead. He would be in that if he had those solo lanes. You think that's it?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know what. I mean, I really like the Abatage lineup with Gilius. I thought that made a lot of sense in Schalke. I'm not sure exactly what team I would put him into. I would have to think about that more. Maybe an XL or something. Actually, no, with Nuke Duck that wouldn't really work. I'm not sure exactly where I'd put him. I haven't thought about that in depth enough to like really give you a solid take. But I just feel like it's just. I mean, unless Certus is this beast that has not been unleashed yet, and you know, like he's the next coming of one of these great European mid laners, I feel like this team is just going to be bottom of the table, like bottom 3 is where I'm putting them.
Yeah, and all I'll say is this. I'm not going to hate on them, but I don't imagine every other scouting team in Europe looked at Certus and was like, nah, not interested. And then SK was like, we'll pick you up. You can play with us. Listen, I don't think he was like Tom Brady who went 199 in the draft or whatever the fuck. Like, I don't imagine this is the case. So again, unfortunately, I'll invoke my original premise. Not only is the rest of the team whack, the one thing I've got to have at least have a sexy mid lane. It's got to have someone who can pop off and go like. I think he's going to be one of the worst mids in the league. I'm not hating.
I mean, he had a good Corki game versus Mad Lions. I put some respect on him there. The Zoe game wasn't it. The Zoe game just wasn't it afterwards. I mean, then again, he is playing against humanoids, so you know you can't be too harsh on that. I mean, I would just guess, like, it's not necessarily that I've seen anything that automatically triggers in my mind, like, oh, no, this guy doesn't have it. He hasn't given me anything like that where I'm just completely against it. It's just, the reason why I don't think it's going to happen is just because it's purely unlikely. You know, like, most of the time, players don't end up coming to a team like SK and become, like, one of the best mid laners, right? Like, it's not like Zaze became one of the best mid laners in LEC. It's just when you pick up a player like that from ERLs, that's not highly like sought after by people. Most of the times they don't work out, but they could. And I haven't seen anything that has made me just think, oh, this guy just doesn't have it. Just most of the time they don't have it.
All right, here's the thing. Since we've got 2 teams left, our vote, since you already sort of briefly addressed Astralis, we do Astralis really quickly and then we just do Rogue at the end. So do you have any further thoughts on the Astralis lineup?
No, this team just, okay, so I guess the only thought I have is that the player that people told me Dejor is not really what I saw. I saw like he was trying to be like this like pop off player, but he just doesn't have all the skills yet, which I don't hate. Like, that's fine. Like, you're 18 years old or something. You played one split in ERLs or maybe 2 splits in ERLs. It's fine. If you're not all the way there yet, that's okay. It's just that like, if you're not all the way there yet, who on the team is? Like, who's going to be your best player? Like, White Knight, is that your best player? Kabi maybe is your best player. I don't know who your best player is. So Yeah, I can't see a world where they're not bottom three. Maybe they're bottom three, but with like a better record that you inspect. It's like, oh, they went 5-13. Like, that's not a bad ninth place, but it's a ninth place. Like, most of the time, I would say that they're probably going to be 10th.
Yeah, my problem is obviously it's a very underwhelming roster. I mean, there's not aside. Basically, Dejaw was it. Like he actually had to do what we were talking about with Certus. He had to come in and actually have been undervalued and actually be some god tier mid who's like going to be the next great rookie. At the moment, like I haven't seen it yet in the first couple of games. I'll certainly give it. That's the one player I'll sort of pause on. The others are known quantities to me. Like Zanzara's okay. I never thought he was that good. I think actually he's a player where, funnily enough, he's sort of gone the early Gilius route. I think it's more the trash talking and the personality people are vibing with in the server. He's just all right. He's not terrible. He's certainly not like losing the game constantly.
Yeah.
White Knight, listen, I'll say this, and maybe old school fans don't know. He briefly studied in different roles in the LEC when it was EULCS years and years ago. He's been on the ladder high up for a billion years. So he must have talent to be consistently like hanging around this long. The problem is he's just an okay player. Like if the rest of the team was really good, yeah, he can be on the team. The whole team's okay players. And the worst one of all is the biggest name is caPs. And the best thing about caPs is that he is discount reckless. If you put him on a team with the mega solo laners, boom, we're in action. Now we can maybe be a team that's contending. Now we can maybe get that last world spot. On this team, like it isn't in caPs' DNA to be a superstar ADC. He's not going to be the guy who like rally around me, guys. My time to shine. Like, dude, he even said himself essentially he took this offer because he didn't want to gamble. He didn't even get an LEC. Spoiler: that isn't the mentality of someone who's going to dominate the league and shit stomp everyone. That's someone who just wants to have a job. Which, by the way, he seems like his personality is totally set to be just a good ADC and do all right. And then let's be real. Here's my problem. I left him till last for obvious reasons. It is so cynical that Promiscu is still in this fucking team. Like, I'm not going to go like Reddit. Like, for example, Reddit now hates him doubly as much because he trash talked those fucking people last year or whatever.
He shit talked the boss.
I don't do that, man. I don't give a fuck about that.
He's the shilling guy. Like the guy said, he's shilling. Like he says, WPGG. Yes. You can't flame that guy, man. Yes. You can't flame that guy.
No. I'll just say this. I've just never seen anything in the server. Every time I watched Promiscu his whole career, I just always saw a player who looked like people were telling me, oh, he's better in the scrims. Eventually, I have to see it. And then not only that, he had the worst quality, which is he'd be very underwhelming. And then he would just do a mad out of nowhere that was like, oh, what the fuck is this? Like, and so the only reason, as far as I can tell, he's in the team is because, as people know, I think the Astralis organization goes out of their way not to spend money. They're not going to do big buyouts. They're not going to challenge people for players. They're just going to pick up whoever is basically available and can fit in the chair. And unfortunately, that means here's the thing that'll kill you. Here's one angle, maybe even we can open up, and maybe this can be the angle instead of Astralis. I think actually this is what's going to be really interesting to me. As these ERLs develop, Dom, so that, for example, there's a world where even if Carmine Corp never buys into LEC, they keep building really strong teams. And by the way, this is the point I want to make. Carmine Corp is now a way better place to go and play for a year than Astralis, even though Astralis is an LEC. So spoiler, if you're SK Gaming, if you're Astralis, you are in a really bad fucking spot the next few years because you're not even going to get like the 9th or 10th best player at that role. He's just going to go and try and prove himself in Carmine Corp and get into Mad Lions or Rogue. So in my opinion, this is an example. This is why they have this lineup. This is why Promiscu is in the LEC, because if you just had to take whoever's available, he's there. There are way better players even in the ERL.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, for a branding perspective or like just popularity or, you know, the hype perspective, I think if you're not in one of the top 5 teams, you're legit like competing for a title, competing to go to Worlds, I think it's better to be in Carmine Corp or KOI, yes, Ebai's team, than any of those 5 teams, than Misfits, XL, BDS, SK, and Astralis. I think those 5 teams, they'll never be able to match what you can get by being on Ebai's team or K-Corp. Like those are just way bigger names. So to me, I think that the best thing for LEC that could possibly happen is if they get those teams in the LEC. I think LEC will just start being mental. Like the viewership numbers that they'll get are insane. Here's the thing though. I don't think that K-Corp and KOI would be that incentivized to join the LEC unless the LEC starts changing their rules because of the co-streaming. I feel like Ebai being able to co-stream his team's matches is a huge selling point for his team. Carmine or Kometo being able to co-stream the matches live on Twitch is a huge thing. So I wonder what they're going to start doing, because up until this point, LEC has been adamant, no co-streaming. Like, we want to have complete control of the narrative. Like, No co-streaming ever. Like, until we think we need it, what is the point? Why are we going to take a risk for something that could hurt the product? Now there's going to be incentive. It's like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to be like co-streaming just for those guys, or only co-streaming in other languages? What are you going to do to try to incentivize these guys to be in the LEC? Because from what I can tell, K Corp is chilling in the LFL. They don't feel like they're hamstrung or like they're hurting their organization by being there. They're doing a great job. So I think it's actually pretty interesting if we get into that topic. But if we go back to the Astralis point, I will say that when watching them, maybe it's just because it's spring, maybe it's because I haven't seen them into the whole year. For some reason, I like this team more with these 5 players than I did last year. Like, by the end of last year, I just wanted to stop watching fucking Astralis. Maybe it's just I haven't seen them in a while, so I have more endeared to them or something. But I actually don't hate watching this team. I like watching Dejor into space off, but at least like try to make the big play. I'm okay with that for right now. Obviously, if it happens like 18 games in a row, it starts getting pretty sad. But I don't dislike watching this team the way I disliked watching them before. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Fair enough. Right, we've left them till last, Rogue, and I actually think that's the perfect order, dude, because in my opinion, this is actually a really interesting team. Because what's interesting about this squad to me is, one, just like Mad Lions, except Mad Lions thus far, it's working out again. They've again re-upped. This is another team where it's like, bro, if you aren't even going to somehow retain talent like Inspired and Hans Sama, why the fuck should I ever even care about your team? Like, essentially what you're telling me is you're also just going to gamble. I'm just going to keep going again and again and try and get the miracle pick. It's like, it ain't going to happen. So my problem with this squad is, I think the Malran pickups are stupid as fuck. I don't care what anyone tells me about the LCK, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you just took, in theory, a guy who, like, look, he had his flaws, but when he played his game, he was incredibly polished and inspired, and basically was like, the team was almost built to allow him to do that. And you're just going to throw in a fucking Korean jungler who wasn't, like, I never personally, the few times I saw, I never thought he had like these crazy potential. It was just an all right Korean jungler. I don't get it myself. And then on the whole angle of like, they kept Trimby. Again, I thought he was all right last year. He would sometimes have some good games. And I've never seen what they saw in the tryouts that made them so hyped to get him. And I think Comp is good. He's kind of like, funny enough, like his old teammate Labrov, right? You know why he was in LEC. You know why teams got him. It's just, did he ever really like show the top potential? Did he ever really come close to being like a top 3 ADC? Not really. I mean, ultimately he never made it. So like, I don't hate these as gambles, but not if I'm the team who, remember, like Rogue couldn't fail to win like 11, 12 games each split last year. That's what the situation was. Not only in theory do we have some big teams that are going to be better than you, but I actually think this lineup is just a worse version of the old Rogue. So when I look at the squad, unless really my boy Larson was actually reading those fucking DMs and all that shit to work on his mindset, his competitor, unless he's really going to have like an MVP split, what is it to this team? I mean, to me, it looks like a team that like a good split is you come fourth. So I'm just so underwhelmed. Like the pieces, look, there's still enough good pieces. They should be fourth or fifth. Like they should win the games. But I don't see where they're going to, the contenders spark. I don't see how they're going to gel and become some sort of fighting unit that I'm going to be excited to watch at Worlds. Like I hope they don't make Worlds with this lineup.
I mean, I think the problem is this, right? Like when you have that list or those 5 players that they had before and the results were the same way they were and they had this like choking problem that was so consistent, you just have to change the team.
Yeah.
Like, so the option is like, it's not even that like, can you still retain players or you fail to retain players? It's that you have to change your team after that. Like something in the fucking, like in the well was just poisoned. Like it was just completely fucked up with the way that they were able to just throw every single time. Like you could tell the mentality of the team, even when they got advantages, was like, oh, we're going to throw again. Like when is the throw going to start happening? And the team was just shattered. So to me, I don't really know what you do in that situation. I feel like that's a real shitty problem when you have players that on paper, like that team should be one of the best teams. If that team stayed together and other teams changed, there's no reason why that shouldn't be considered one of the best teams. You have theoretically the best jungler in the league, the best AD carry in the league. Your mid and your top are solid enough, and your support looks like he was improving pretty steadily. Like that should be a team, but you can't have it. You can't have it because of what happened. So what are the options? Like what do you even do from there? What could they have done to make this team a championship team without insane spending? That would be my question.
I'll answer it. I'll give you my speculation. I would have done, listen, even though I know based on the fact that there was an actual bidding war on both sides of the Atlantic for Hans Sama, there wasn't actually a world, I think, where he was staying, because as I alluded to before, Rogue the Org, if someone, listen, if I know people will never get this concept if they're a fan, because if you're a fan, you just care about what you see in the server and you just want your team to have the best players possible. But if you are running a business, if someone essentially says to you, I think your player is really good, and you go, well, I do as well. And he goes, no, I think he's so good, I'll pay like 3 times more than you think he's worth. Well, I'm an idiot if I don't sell him then. Like literally, unless it maybe is caPs or some truly transcendent player that can never be replaced. I'm sorry, in that scenario, like, first of all, this is my issue though. I would say yes, but here's my issue. If I say yes, I've got to be coming with a banger to replace him because I just got 3 times the money. Like, this is an analogy, boys. I'm not saying those are the figures, but again, this is the scenario. So in that scenario, right, that's okay to sell Hans Sama if I come in and the difference is I've signed some like mega big name. Like, it could be whoever you want.
Reckless, right? Like that would be the only
That would
one.
be the banner. Dude, I even thought that would be a great signing. Like that would be it. Yeah, that's it. And then the other one as well for me is this. Like I said about the Malrang one, the other reason I don't get it is, even though I just gave that whole spiel about all the ERL junglers, you wouldn't try one of those guys over this guy. Fuck it, like the Synkrov guy on BDS, well, I'd have had him in this spot instead. Like the problem with the Malrang move is this, right? This is like what I said about Mac and Mad Lions. If this works, then the coaching staff are rogue geniuses and I just don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. At the moment, I don't see why it would work. That's the problem. I feel like it's such a Hail Mary that it's almost like you are hoping, like, but he's Korean, bro. Like, I just don't get the Malrang move, mate.
Yeah, I think it's really, really tough. I mean, when you look at the history of Europe, right, there's been one insanely banger import jungler in the history of Europe, and that was Reignover. Outside of that, it's been an experiment that has failed multiple times. Like, people remember Mowgli coming over, people remember Spirit coming over. It just feels like it's never quite there.
I know. If even Spirit, dude, isn't gonna like be the best player in the whole league, come on, man. This is not. We aren't a jungler region for Koreans.
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, it never works out. I mean, it could be English proficiency. It could be just like the massive culture shock that you experience. But I just feel like importing jugglers in general doesn't seem to work out east to west, like really. Like, and I don't know. It just, for some reason, it's just not working. So maybe he'll be good. I just feel like he's already playing different than what I expected. I mean, everyone hyped this guy is like a psychopath, man. He's an insane carry jungler. And already he just looks like he's going to try to make the right plays. He's trying to hit the right timings. He's like pretty low in farm. He's not making like insane plays or anything like that. So to me, it's just like, it's not bad. I mean, they won their games, but with how far behind he got, it could go really poorly for some of the better teams. So I think that right now people are giving them a pass because they played pretty weak teams. They played, I mean, what, 3 out of the 5 bottom teams? Sure. Okay, well, like to me, you can't really judge them yet. And I don't see them being any better than they were before. So to me, it's like, it's a solid like 5th, maybe 4th if Vitality really shits the bed. But in terms of winning a championship, I think there's going to be a break off between the top teams and Rogue for sure.
And now we've hit my last point, which is this is the worst part of this lineup for my money, Dom. If they did look at last year, and essentially what you were saying last year was like player-wise, I agree with the lineup, but stylistically, something didn't work. Something in the DNA was corrupted in this sense and couldn't almost succeed, you know, like something about it just couldn't come together at the big moments. Right, look stylistically at the team you have made here. Right, Odoamne has made his whole career being the best punching bag in the LEC. Malrang was supposed to be the psycho. By the way, we want a psycho in this team. If everyone watched Inspired last year, we don't want more of perfect Korean style play. So you go and get a Korean who now is playing Korean style League of Legends. That's terrible. Larson already needs to come out of his shell. The joke with him is he just skipped the part where you're a superstar player who plays all the shit in mid and went straight to the Bjergs and Froggen like it's made.
He became Froggen.
Yeah, the joke is he just skipped to that part. That's why I sort of like him, but at the same time, I'm frustrated by him. And then we go to the bot lane. Comp was actually famous for being something in the reckless mold of the ADCs. And then we've got Trimby. It's only his bloody 3rd split. Like, where's the spice in this team as well? This team is like, you know what? I'll dare to invoke and diss British food for 1 second, right? Even though British food can be banging, Dom, it's delicious, all the shit. The problem you would say
I've never
is
heard that.
There's no spice in it. So if you have, for example, a shepherd's pie is a really good meal. If you just had a long day's work, you want your energy, you got like your bit of carbs, you got your meat, it tastes delicious. Presentation's not so great, but you know, it's just a solid meal. It's a really solid meal. The problem with this is there's no spice to it. There's no like heavy flavor. There's no like crazy journey when you're eating it. It's just exactly what you expect and nothing more. And that is exactly what this lineup is just fucking the color beige.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the one player that might be able to pop off is Comp. I think Comp actually had talent when I watched him play. I feel like he really could be good. I didn't like that he got kicked out of Vitality lineup when he did. That being said, I thought Crownie was a good fit for that lineup. So maybe that was just something that didn't work out. So maybe Comp could just be a superstar. But I just feel like that's all your eggs are in that basket. If Comp is not like the next upset, then your lineup is peaking 5th, 4th, something like that. And like 5th and 4th, it really just depends on how bad other teams are. It's not necessarily like, oh, you're 4th, you're one of the best teams in the league. It'll be like a Misfits 4th from last year, where it's like, I mean, I guess Misfits was technically like 5th if you consider like where G2 ended up and stuff. But it's like that type of 4th or 5th where you got to do something about it. It's like the 100 Thieves Tommy lineup with Ryoma on it, where they got 4th. It's not something that you're confident in, and you feel like it has much promise. So I feel like they could end up being a pretty frustrating team to watch as time goes on. But yeah, I just wanted to say, like, look, I've been alive for 31 years now. I'm very adventurous with the food that I've eaten. I've never once had somebody said, yo, let's get some British food. Like, when do people get British food? Like, what do you even say for British food? Like, the most I get hyped on is like, oh, Nando's. Like, you got to try some Nando's. Like, that's all I got. So Thorin, are you sure? Are you just a British food defender?
You ready for the comeback?
Okay.
Have you ever had a roast dinner? Like roast lamb with roast potatoes and Yorkshire puddings? Have you ever had it? Gravy?
I have not had it.
I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. The British people eat it every Sunday, Dom. It's one of the best foods of all time. I'm not even joking. That's the one to try. There's two that you got to try if you eat British food. The problem you obviously thinking of fish and chips. That's food you have. That's like the equivalent of burger and fries. Yeah. That's not real food. Like it's the roast dinner, which is what everyone looks forward to, and then the other one, everyone forgets this one. This is why I'll always beat everyone. You know, everyone goes, breakfast, the most important meal of the day. What, you want a croissant or a fucking bagel? Nah, you want a full English breakfast, mate. I kick the shit out of any other breakfast. It's got everything, mate. The whole point of English breakfast, by the way, is you eat that and then you go and carry like fucking massive piles of bricks up a thing because it's like 2,000 calories in that motherfucker. So listen, maybe Americans, I shouldn't have introduced you to that. That might be the end for you guys. That's like Denny's mixed with a greasy spoon, mixed with fucking, I don't know, some other shit. So that might be the end for you. I might have just ended America completely. But they're the two secrets. And I'll just say this. The last thing I want to say in this episode is all I'm going to do is on week 3 and week 6, I'm just going to DM Crownshot and go, fucking Jezu and like Smatty just suck, dude. Like, why aren't you in the league? Just to trigger him. I
mean, that's something that's gonna have to happen at some point. Like, we didn't talk about BDS in depth, but like Xmatty did not have a good showing. No. Like him and Jezu, to me, were the clear worst 2 AD carries in the league based on what we've seen.
And he's been around forever. He was in those like ERL teams for, I'm not joking, for like 3 or 4 or 5 years, like ages now.
Yeah. I mean, and then
he's
like
got some spring pop, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the problem for me is that the problem for me is that he didn't stick to the same style. Like, yeah, he played the Lucian game and people were like, nah, he's not a Lucian player. Then he played the Jhin game and it was, I mean, I guess they ended up winning and they're like, oh, but that's not really his style. Wait until you see his Ezreal. And then on the 3rd game, he played Ezreal and it just looked horrible. Like he was missing every Q on Ezreal. It just looked terrible. So to me, I think the biggest problem is that he didn't stick. Like he should have just kept the Ezreal as a mystery. It's like, no, I'm really good at Ezreal, but it just doesn't work in the meta. Like maybe you won't see it for now, but when I get it, you know, then it's gonna pop off. He already revealed his whole hand. Yeah, it's like, oh, that's your Ezreal. That's your best champion. Doesn't fucking look good. Where's Crownshot? Crownshot waiting room. That's BDS for me. It's a Crownshot waiting room. I mean, look, I'm willing to give him like 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Like sure. Like let's see how it goes. But I mean, if he's still putting up these types of numbers in 4 or 5 weeks, bring Crownshot in. I've seen enough because Crownshot's not bad. There's no way that
he's always going to be serviceable. Come on.
He's neon. He's going to be like 5th. Like he'll win some lane. He'll be like 4th, 5th, 6th, something like that. I mean, that should be good for BDS. You don't have players that are 4th, 5th, 6th in your team. So Crownshot waiting room unless Maddie shows up by like at least week 4, week 5.